Last time, I demonstrated how to implement pagination on a GraphQL query. So this time, I want to take another step into advanced querying in GraphQL and demonstrate how to implement filtering. So ultimately, I want to make a query and pass in some kind of criteria and only get back records that meet that criteria. So similar to pagination, setting up filtering in Hot Chocolate is pretty straightforward. So starting off, we're going to head back up into our startup.cs. So here in configure services where we configure our Hot Chocolate GraphQL server, we are going to extend this and we are also going to add filtering. So this will allow us to specify a use filtering attribute on any of our queries to automatically set up filtering and all the parameters required for filtering, and it's somewhat magical and super powerful too. So now let's actually use that filtering. So in our query, the place that we added pagination, so this is for getting paginated courses, we also have this get courses query that just gives us back everything, no pagination options. And I talked about this last time when implementing pagination, and really the two main differences between these queries is that this returns an IEnumerable and this returns an iQueryable. So if we set up filtering or pagination on this query for courses that just returns an IEnumerable, then all it's going to do is apply that pagination and filtering on the list of courses that we get back. So in other words, it's not going to get translated into our database query. Whereas if we return this iQueryable, which uses our DB context and ultimately represents our Entity Framework database query, then our pagination and, as we'll see, our filtering is also going to get applied to our database queries. So we're not going to be loading all of our courses into our application and then applying the pagination and filtering. We can do it directly on our database. So that being said, I'm just going to use filtering on this paginated courses query so that all of my filtering is going to be applied directly to my database query, going to be much more performant. And one other thing I want to point out real quick is that the order of these attributes does matter. So DB context has to come before paging, and paging does have to come before filtering. But other than that, this is good to go. Let's test this out. So we can still query for our paginated courses. So here I'll grab the first 3 courses. Works perfectly. But if I refresh my schema and then take a look at these other parameters I have here, I now have this where parameter. So this is where we specify all of our filter criteria. So if we open this up into a JSON object with some curly brackets and then do a control space, get some IntelliSense, and we get all kinds of options in here. So there's and or if you want to specify multiple criteria. But for this demo, we'll just filter on one property on our course. We're going to filter on the name, and we can open this up to another JSON object. And I want the name to contain alg. So that's short for algorithms. So we should get back our one algorithms course. Here we go. There we go. Filtered out all the other ones. And just to demo an and or real quick, how about we do an or query here? So the value for or is an array of these filters. And since we're using or, only one of the items in or is going to have to be true. So we'll move our name filter into here and going to have to surround this in curly brackets. Try and clean up this formatting a little bit. So the name contains alg, or we'll say the subject, how about equals just EQ, and then science. So we should get back multiple courses here. Maybe not. Maybe I don't have any science courses. How about mathematics? So that works, and that is true. For some reason, our chemistry course is math, so that's kind of a mistake. So let's change this. The name can equal chemistry, and then we get back the courses that match either of these criteria. So just to prove our filtering is getting applied to our database query, we can come into our startup.cs and configure our DB context. So we can log to, and we want to log just to our console. So console write line, and now re-execute this. And as we can see in these logs, Entity Framework is considering our filter criteria. So checking if the name contains parameter 0, I assume that's alg, or the name equals parameter 1, I assume that is chemistry. And then if we also use filtering for just our regular get courses query, so not returning an iQueryable, just the IEnumerable, meaning the filtering is not going to be translated into our database query. Let's see how that looks. So here I'm querying for courses where the name contains alg again. Let's run that. So the filtering did work, but as you can see, our SQL is just a select from, no filtering or anything. So we're pulling in all the courses and then applying the filtering. So that being said, I'll just remove filtering from this get courses query and just leave it on this paginated courses query, which I could probably rename this to something more general because it does more than just pagination now. It also does filtering and it'll do more in the future, but we'll just leave it like that for now. So the other thing I wanted to mention with filtering is that there is some customization you can do with this. So if we look at this use filtering attribute, then we can also, let me get some IntelliSense in here. We can also specify a filter type. So not really much info about what that is here, but basically we can extend the default filtering behavior. So over in our schema, I'm going to add a new folder for filters, and inside this folder we'll have a new class. This will be the course filter type, and we're going to extend the default filtering behavior. So we're going to inherit from filter input type. So import that from hotchocolate.data.filters, and the type that we're filtering on is our course type. And then filter input type has a configure method. So if we override that, so configure, then inside here we can apply some custom filtering behavior. So one thing I want to do, and we can run this real quick so I can kind of talk through this, is if I do IntelliSense here, then we can filter on our students. But so far we haven't really done anything with querying for students, and in the future I expect to turn students on our course type into a resolver instead of a property. So in that case we're not even going to be able to filter on it. So what I want to do is actually remove students from the filtering options, and to do that, this configure method gets this filter input type descriptor. So we can take that. I just want to ignore the students property, so I can pass in an expression in here, and the parameter for the expression is our course, and we can just select the property we want to ignore. So in this case, just want to ignore the students property. And now if I run this again, or not run this again, what we have to do is actually use this course filter type. So back in our query, let's specify our course filter type as the type for use filtering. So we want to use type of, and the type for our filtering is going to be the course filter type that we just created. So import that, and now if we run this and reload our schema and then look at IntelliSense, then as you can see, students is no longer an option for our filter criteria. So we're successfully ignoring it, and our custom filter behavior is working. Or I guess not really filter behavior, more like filter configuration. We're not really changing how the filtering is working, just configuring it differently. All the hard stuff is left up to Hot Chocolate, which makes our job super easy. So just to review, we started off in our startup.cs. We've added filtering to our Hot Chocolate GraphQL server, and then we used filtering for our courses query, and we made sure our attributes were in order. So DB context, then paging, then filtering, and then we configured filtering a little bit. Nothing crazy, but still wanted to show this off. All we did was ignore students from the filter options. And then lastly, similar to pagination, I discussed the differences between using filtering on an iQueryable query versus an IEnumerable query, with the main difference being that using filtering on an iQueryable query will allow us to apply filtering directly to our database query. So hopefully you can apply filtering to your own Hot Chocolate GraphQL server so that clients can filter out the data that they don't need. If you have any questions, criticisms, or concerns, be sure to leave them below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video or are enjoying the channel, consider becoming a member. Other than that, leave a like or subscribe for more. Thank you.